Hello, this is tutorial number 2, and here I'm going to show you some shortcuts for DraftSight that should make your life a little bit easier. And what we're going to discuss in this tutorial specifically are the function keys at the top of your keyboard, basically the ones that say F1, F2, F3, etc. And I'm not talking about typing the letter F on the keyboard with a number. I'm talking about the ones that are at the top of your keyboard that say the F and the 1 together. So those are known as function keys. So the ones that we're going to discuss currently, and you'll see a lot of jumping around on my screen as I press these and try and show you what each one is. But the first one we're going to talk about is F1. And when I hit F1 on my screen, what it does is it brings up the help box. And when the help box comes up, there's all kinds of stuff that you can read. Although generally I find that I'm looking for something specific. So if I will click on the search tab and type in whatever it is that I'm looking for, and a lot of times I can find it. If I can't find it here, I generally will search for it on Google to solve the problem that I'm having. So F1 is basically the quick way to get to help. F2, what F2 does, I'm not sure if you can see this, but down here at the bottom, this is known as the command window. And the command window is really what you have to pay attention to make everything look really good up here in your drawing area. So this is, a lot of people that struggle with CAD and with DraftSight, the reason why is because they're paying more attention to their drawing up in the drawing area rather than paying attention to the command window. And that's really where you need to be looking. And so all F2 does when I hit it is it makes my command window much larger so I can see what's going on. I don't use this command a whole lot because I know to pay attention down here to the command window, but that's generally what it does. And again, when you bring it up, you can also scroll through and look at all of your past commands to see if you made any mistakes or if you were doing things right or how you set things up, etc. So it basically just brings the command window up, makes it bigger, and you can even make it bigger if you want, and so on. So that's what F2 does. F3, what F3 does is it turns eSnap on and off. So an example, I currently have it off. So if I were to start drawing a line right here, and I draw this line over, and I draw it down, and I go over here and I try and connect it, it will not give me the yellow box that it normally does to connect that because eSnap or Entity Snap is currently off. So basically what I would be doing is I'd be doing my best guess to try and get those to connect. However, I can go down and turn eSnap on or hit F3, and then you can see there's the yellow box, or there's the midpoint, or there's that yellow box, and there's that midpoint right there, and so on. So eSnap, you can turn that on or off. There is going to be times when you want to turn it on or turn it off, excuse me. But most of the time you're going to want it on. But you will run into sometimes you go, man, that thing is bothering me. I need to turn it off. It's really easy. Either F3 or you hit the eSnap button down here on the bottom. So that is F3. F4 we're not going to discuss. It's not going to come into play. F5 is known as isoplane, and that will only come into play when we are doing isometric drawings, which is going to be a little while. So I will discuss F5 later down the road. But essentially that does the same thing as flipping your triangle, flipping your 30-60 triangle to make the height, the width, and the depth lines, and that's what F5 will do for us at a later date. F6, what F6 does is down here next to E-track, you see these two numbers, or actually there's two commas. So one of those, the first number is the X number, the second number is the Y number, and the third number is the Z number, which the Z won't come into play for us because that's when you're working with 3D. But all F6 does is it turns those numbers off, or it basically freezes them. So if I draw a line and I hit F6, then those numbers no longer are moving. And if I hit F6 again, then those numbers start moving again. And I really don't find any reason to turn that off. I always like to know where my lines are as far as the X and Y coordinates go. For those of you familiar with algebra, all CAD is, all that we're looking at is a giant Cartesian coordinate plane which show both the X and the Y axis. And those are the numbers that it's referring to down there on the bottom of the screen. F7, what F7 does is it turns the grid on and off. So there you can see a grid, and this can be helpful when it's used in conjunction with snap. And snap, the shortcut for snap is F9. Let me turn snap on so you can see what's going on here. Basically what's going on when snap is on, you can see that my cursor, as I move it around, is kind of jumping from dot to dot. And so it's snapping to each of those points on the grid. And even if I turn grid off, you'll notice my cursor is still snapping. It's just that those points are no longer there. Now if I go down here and I turn snap off again, now my cursor moves freely again. So snap and grid can be really helpful when we're not drawing with dimensions, or you want to make things a certain length long. But as you get more advanced, you'll use less and less of snap and grid. But you should know those shortcuts. F7 turns grid on and off, and again you can also click on the buttons down here on the bottom. F9 turns snap on and off, and again you can click on the button on the bottom. Not to be confused, I know that you have snap here and you have E snap over here. E snap, again, that turns off your endpoint, your midpoint, where the cursor is snapping to different things, where snap by itself is just snapping to the points on the grid. So don't get confused by those. But again, F7 is turning the grid on and off, and F9 is turning snap on and off. Alright, then the last one we have, or second to last one we have, is Ortho, which is F8. And what happens when I turn Ortho on is that when I draw a line, Ortho is currently on, so all I can do is draw a perfectly horizontal line or a perfectly vertical line and nothing in between. That's all Ortho allows me to do. If I go down here and I turn Ortho off, or if I hit F8 to turn it off, then I can draw a line in whatever orientation I please. So if you want to draw a perfectly straight line, make sure Ortho is on. Okay. Let's see. F10 is polar. There's polar. I turn it on, and polar is basically for angled lines. If I right click and go to settings, here are the options, and my polar is currently set at 30 degrees, and I'll show you what that means. If I were to draw a line, you can watch it snap every 30 degrees. There's 30 degrees, there's 60 degrees, obviously 90, there's 120, 150, 180, and so on, and it snaps every 30 degrees. And if I wanted this to snap every 15 degrees, I could go to settings, change this guy right here to 15 degrees, and now you will watch my, there's 15, there's 30, there's 45, there's 60, 75, and 90. And so that just has to do with polar. And then that's coming down the road a ways, but that is the shortcut, is F10 for polar. And finally, last but certainly not least, is object tracking, which is F11. And all object tracking does, or E-track, as it's known as down here, I'm going to turn it off. But if I have a line and I want to get this, say, the same distance as that guy right there, object tracking will help me. As you can see, it's not helping me right now, but when I turn it on, E-track, and I go down here and I leave my cursor there for just a second, now when I bring this down, it's going to snap a line when I get to that exact same distance as on the other side. So again, generally I leave E-track on because it helps me more than it hurts me. And if I need to turn it off, then I either hit F11 or I just go down here and I hit E-track. So those are some of the shortcuts that you should know having to do with the function buttons. And again, many of them correspond to the buttons that are on the bottom of the screen. So learn to use those, learn to understand those as you get going, and they will certainly be of assistance. We'll see you in the next tutorial.